If you've ever been in a chaotic or emergency situation, you know it's very easy to quickly lose your sense of awareness, and the fight or flight mentality can take over your logical, decisive thinking. So, how do we avoid this chaos from happening? Simple: preparation. The fact remains that there are nearly 100,000 fires each year in non-residential facilities, meaning business facilities. What I'm about to teach you is not brain surgery, but if I can put each of you in a place that makes you feel just a little bit more comfortable in an emergency situation, such as a fire in your home, office, or work site, I will have achieved my goal. The easiest way to combat fear is taking steps to educate yourself, therefore alleviating many of the irrational fears you have associated with a particular scenario. So let's dive right into this discussion and discuss the three components that make up a fire. They are as follows: a fuel source, an ignition or heat source, and everyone take a big, deep breath. Yes, the oxygen we're all breathing right now, i.e. an oxygen source. So let's first take a look at some of the most common fuel and ignition sources. These typically include paper, cardboard, wood, gas, oil, grease, diesel, oxygen and acetylene tanks, paint, spray cans, and many more. Some common ignition sources would be overloaded circuits, grinding sparks, welding sparks, lit cigarette butts, and open flames on a stove. Before we move too far ahead, it's important for us to conduct this next exercise either by yourself or within your groups. Pause this video and list as many fuel sources and ignition sources you work around. This is critical in being aware of the many fire hazards you have present during your day-to-day operations. Welcome back. I hope this quick exercise helped intentionally point out just how many fire hazards you have around you. Now, the key to this is to keep these three elements separate from one another. As an example, you can have an oxygen and fuel source together, but as long as you've eliminated the ignition sources, you'll be in safe hands. Okay, in the next section, we're going to talk about the four main types of fires and some important details on each. There are four main types of fires that I want you to be aware of. The type of fire you're dealing with will determine the type of fire extinguisher you need to use. So let's go through these quickly. A-type fires can be remembered as A for ash because these are fires made up of wood, paper, cloth, and plastic. B-type fires can be remembered as B for bomb because these fires are typically explosive and are made up of gases, oils, solvents, grease, and spray cans. C-type fires can best be remembered as C for circuit because these are those electrical fires brought on by overloaded circuits, faulty electrical panels, and power tools. Now, D-type fires are those that typically occur in welding and grinding operations when you're working with materials consisting of magnesium, titanium, aluminum, or pyrophoric materials. If you're working with these types of materials, it's a must that you have a Class D fire extinguisher nearby. The cool thing about the fire extinguishers these days is that most of them now come prepared to fight all Class A, B, and C type fires. But be sure to check on the extinguisher you have to determine this for sure. Otherwise, you're literally fighting a fire with no ammunition. A quick note on using water and water-filled fire extinguishers. Those are for type A fires only. That's important to remember. So the moral of the story is check your extinguishers to ensure they say type A, B, and C, or D in cases of the metals we just discussed. So we've talked a little bit about fire extinguishers and what components make up a fire, but we haven't discussed how to properly use one. First off, let me ask you a question. Are you required to fight a fire at your work site or facility, even if it's small and manageable? I'll give you a second to think, but the answer to that question is no. You are never required to fight a fire of any size. That being said, if you are trapped and need to know how to operate an extinguisher, it's critical you've had a basic hands-on fire extinguisher training to break any fears of operating one. The following is a quick video on how to use the PASS system for operation of a fire extinguisher. I highly recommend you grab your own fire extinguisher and walk through each step with yours in hand. If you're with a group, allow each one to get their hands on it too. One note: just pretend to pull the pin. Don't actually pull the pin and squeeze because it will go off. That being said, it's as simple as it looks and sounds. Enjoy the practice. There are many of you that might have a natural fear when it comes to operating a fire extinguisher, and I fully understand that. It's in those chaotic environments, though, that you want to have somewhat of a feel for what it's like. So what I'd recommend is that you go find a fire extinguisher in your facility, simply just get your hands on it and see how easy it really is. I'm going to take you through the PASS system, which is a 4-letter acronym for how to operate a fire extinguisher. Very simple. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to pull the pin. You can discard that. Then you're simply going to aim at the target itself or at the fire, and then you're going to squeeze and sweep. Okay, so you pull the pin, aim, squeeze, and sweep, and it looks just like this. You're just rotating back and forth. Basically, you're sweeping to try to cut out that chemical connection that exists and that what's actually creating that fire to continue to go. We're almost wrapped up here, but there are still a few quick points you need to be aware of when prepping for a hazard as serious as a fire at your facility or job site. And I use that word serious very intentionally because if you've ever known anyone with substantial burns, you know it's a miserable and painful path. Shoot, just think back to a time you've burned your finger in the kitchen. Now multiply that pain by 100 and you'll only start to get close to what burn victims suffer through over the affected parts of their bodies. This preparation we are doing right here is designed to help you so that that never happens to you or any other team member. Now, back to the lecture at hand. Here's a list of very simple things you should be implementing during your day-to-day operations. Number 1, keep an organized facility that keeps your ignition sources and fuel sources separate whenever possible. Keep the facilities clean so you don't have combustible items laying around. Number 2, never ever block the exits with anything at all. Keep them clear and well lit in case the power goes out and you need to see the door or the smoke is so heavy that you can still see the path to the exit. Number 3, ensure you have a designated meeting spot outside and away from your facility or job site where all team members can be accounted for and the fire department can know if there are any potential victims inside the building. Number 4, never leave the scene without first being accounted for. We don't want the fire department rushing in to save someone who isn't there, therefore risking their own lives for absolutely nothing. Number 5, make sure your fire extinguishers are charged and ready to roll and that you know how to use them. Get your hands on those bad boys and feel confident. Again, we don't need any team members like we saw from the Office clip running over fellow teammates to save themselves. Number 6, it's always a best practice to have a mock fire drill to ensure everyone knows what to do and where to go in case they hear those alarms go off. This should be done at least annually and it should be reviewed with each new hire. So if you're a new employee watching this training, be sure you ask about the emergency procedures for the areas you'll be working in. Now, as always, if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. That is a part of this service after all. Please take these fire emergencies seriously and don't allow yourself or your organization to be one of the 100,000 businesses that will report a fire this year. I'll see you in the next training.